Today's virtual event highlighting the work of Heather Blicher, winner of the Distance Librarianship Award. My name's Lindsay Wharton, and I am the co-chair of the discussion group along with Sean Hogan. And the Distance Learning Section discussion group holds virtual discussions following midwinter and annual of each year, but we also hold additional online virtual events throughout the year with the goal of promoting information sharing of expertise and ideas and connecting information professionals amongst the distance learning section and beyond. So creating those connections and sort of sharing what's happening in distance librarianship. Our speaker for this event is Heather Blicher, 2017 Routledge Distance Learning Librarianship Conference Sponsorship Award winner. Heather is the online learning librarian at Northern Virginia Community College. She has worked in public and academic libraries since 2002 and graduated with an MLIS from Florida State University in 2007. Heather connects with online students, faculty, and instructional designers to create embedded library services for a large online learning program and is involved in the hands-on development of OER courses. She is NOVA's campus leader for the Virtual Library of Virginia's Open Textbook Network initiative, an avid explorer of educational technology, and a trap new to return advocate in her spare time. So we're going to begin this session today with a 30-minute presentation by Heather on her innovative work in the field of distance librarianship. We'll have about 15 minutes after that, some more time if we have more questions, for question and discussion. You can use the chat box to ask Heather any questions either during the session or at the end of the session, but that's when we're going to do the Q&A at the end. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to hand it over to Heather, and I'm looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Lindsay, for that introduction. So my name is Heather Blicher, and I am currently the sole librarian at Eli, which is the Extended Learning Institute. That's a mouthful, but we're unofficially known as the virtual campus at Northern Virginia Community College. And one of my main responsibilities is to run the Embedded Librarian program. So I'm here to talk about how I was able to use technology and a bit of experimentation to streamline tasks and work towards a more sustainable model with the resources I have. And that's an ongoing thing. I'm in a unique situation at Eli because I don't work in a traditional library setting. And I'm only the second person to be in this position, so the program is still relatively new. And, we serve around 23,000 students annually, and I do a lot of work with instructional designers and faculty, and of course, OER. So I have a lot of different projects going on. A little background about me. I started working in public libraries, the ref desk, maintaining microfilm machines, doing team programming, and I did an online distance program to earn my master's degree in 2007 and jumped right into a teen youth services librarian job. So coordinating, planning, and implementing programs, doing the marketing, all of that. When I moved to community college position years later, I believe it really helped me to be a better academic librarian. By default, I found that leading training and developing educational programs fits very well with my position, and my institution is and has been a part of several OER initiatives, and I get to be directly involved in those, so I'm really lucky. Also working at the largest community college in Virginia and one of the largest in the US, campuses can become like silos, and I want to keep talking about the embedded program to try to get campus librarians interested. Maintaining an embedded librarian program of this size doesn't leave a lot of time to work on the quality of the content, the quality of the program, but that's what I've been striving to do. And I've made a lot of progress, but I know there's so much more I could be doing. So this is just, what I'm presenting. It's just one example of, the great things that we can do as embedded librarians. And I hope to maybe hear from you at the end and get get some ideas from you. Now to get into the details. This is a snapshot showing the growth of the program from when I started working at Eli. And you can see in fall 2014, there was one full-time librarian and a part-time library assistant, and we were embedded in 49 courses and 141 sections. That means that at the start of each semester, we were individually locating each course section in Blackboard to enroll ourselves, then individually setting up library discussion forums and posts in every course section. So that was extremely time intensive, and between the two of us, we calculated it took about 3 weeks at the beginning of each semester to get it all set up, and then at least one day each week to post weekly content. Now with my latest stats from fall 2016, can you imagine individually doing those tasks in 62 courses and 352 sections? I certainly can't. The quick growth of the program is partially because I started the job and immediately started marketing to faculty because I didn't really grasp how difficult the semester prep of these repetitive tasks would be. It was also because the number of sections of a course offered each semester, of course, isn't under my control, so the numbers kept going up. But I immediately started asking questions, looking for ways to streamline these repetitive tasks. For example, I worked with our Blackboard administrator to batch enroll me in courses, though this still takes time as I have to go through the course catalog and create a list. I put a cap on adding any new courses to the program, though with the addition of OER versions of courses and more sections being added all the time, this didn't help too much. So the goal for me became to streamline and sustain. And what I ended up doing, like I said a little bit earlier, I asked questions, and I made friends. It took over a year of me asking questions and explaining my dilemma to make progress and get the attention and support of the people who could guide me. And I'm lucky because I work, a cubicle row away from Eli's instructional designers and course support staff. And the technology that proved to be the turning point is considered a simple and standard instructional technology tool that they were already using in all of the online courses. So that tool is called an iframe or an inline frame. And if you're not familiar with it, iframes allow content to be embedded inside an HTML document. One example being like a web ad. And the big benefit of iframes is centralized content, maintenance, and editing. So think of it like a television broadcast. The TV set is the content item. There's one in almost every home. And let's say they're all tuned into the same channel. We wouldn't want to film and refilm the television program for every individual TV set, right? So instead, we film the program once and broadcast it to all of the TVs. So that's essentially what we're doing with library content. By creating iframes for library content, it allows us to create and edit information in one place and have all the content items that contain, that particular iframe to reflect those changes. This eliminates the need to input the content in every session of every course before every semester. So you can imagine that saves a lot of time. There is quite a bit of setup involved, so it's not, it's not a process without challenges, but it's definitely we're in the right direction, I think. And so, right now at the moment, I'm using iframes mostly for things that are very general, like contact information, announcements that leads to like a very general website where it lists all of my webinars, and they can choose from them there, as well as general discussion posts like plagiarism and citation that might be the same in every course. So what does this actually do? It, at the beginning of the semester, when a course is copied and a professor, starts having their course and the students are in there, the library content is already in place. It's default in there. And so hopefully, once it's all set up, repetitive tasks are minimized, and that, leaves the librarian time to work on other projects and tasks. Now, along with, the technology side of it, I also took a hard look at what I was being asked to do by the instructional designers and the faculty, and I had to start setting some limits. And I'm sure all of you have been in this sort of situation. And, for example, I decided I was going to do fewer course or professor-specific online learning objects. One example being a professor of a religion course that wanted a course-specific video using a very general library database and using keywords that were specific to her course. And I decided, why remake that video tutorial of that general library database when I already have one, that's already covering the database. It's just not searching her particular keywords. Also, live webinars for low enrollment courses, I decided that I would replace with recordings. And of course, you always want to bend over backwards and do what you can for professors. But I had just reached a certain point where I had to start, setting limits. And I decided I needed to do more reusable online learning objects. So, videos that focus on concepts across the board, LibGuides for a course, not a specific professor, standardized general discussion board posts, and webinar recordings. So I was trying to cut corners where I could. Now let's get technical, and I'll give you a little bit of a background of what exactly is involved in setting up these iframes. So it takes a lot of planning, because once you know the content that you want to create, you want to make sure that you're only putting that content into these courses and these course sections one time, these iframes, where, I can make changes to an iframe and they can, it changes the content and updates it in all of the courses. But there's a but in there. If a course has already been copied, the changes don't affect that course. So you have to fit it in with your instructional designer's schedule when the courses are actually copied from your library or your learning management system. So the tools needed to start are really basic. I used a free HTML content editor called Composer. And then you also need access to a web server with a valid security socket layer. And of course, if you're working on this, definitely reach out, like I said earlier, to people around you that would be able to help you out with this. If you don't have admin privileges, and so that you can download what you need. The next question you might have is, can you do HTML? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Even if it's been a while since you took that web design course in grad school, there are a lot of great web tutorials out there, and I put one up there for you. And here's an example of an iframe code in Blackboard, which is our current learning management system. And you can see I've broken it down by the different sections. And if you've ever done any basic HTML, you'll recognize, the open tag and the closing tag. But once you actually start creating these iframes, you can get into a bit of a rhythm, and it becomes very simple. Although right now on the screen, it may not look like that, but once you get it going, it does. So this is a look at the process. On the left here, this is what you see putting content in Composer. So Composer is, it's pretty similar to Dreamweaver. I think it's a lot more simple, and also it's free, which is great. So you put your content in there, and then the HTML code, once you've saved it in Composer as an HTML document, you put your code into Blackboard, and the students basically see this. Now, when you go back, what you see in Blackboard, once the process is complete, you'll see just this big yellow box, and that means that an iframe is actually in there. And that's when you can go back to where you store all of your original iframes and where you can, edit them and update them. But with the HTML editor that's in Blackboard, that leads over here. This is what you see in the HTML editor once the process is complete. So it's all the same code, and it's just where you put it. So I know that was a lot of information all at once talking about the iframes, but I wanted to try and keep it simple and straightforward. But if you have any questions for me, I'd love to hear it.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Heather. That was really awesome information, and I think really useful for a lot of us that are especially trying to scale in our work. So please use the chat box if you have any questions or topics for discussion at this time. Our committee came up with a couple of questions. So I'm going to start out with one of those. You've done a really amazing job in scaling general library support for an online class. But how do you approach requests for more customized learning objects or support for maybe different types of researches?
That's definitely something that I'm working on. Um, what I initially did was, although I'm embedded in 60 something courses every semester, it sort of, fluctuates depending on what's being offered. I've narrowed it down to what I call 20 core courses, or like gateway courses. And my goal is to, be able to really focus on those 20 courses. But right now, just being me, and I basically have a couple of hours a week. I have part-time help, basically to back me up on email. Right now, I'm really careful about what I commit myself to, because this is all in addition to the regular librarian duties that we have. Even though I'm not at a traditional library, I still answer questions all day online, and talk with students on the phone, and um, so it's kind of this juggling act, I feel like. But I do work on specific projects for faculty that are course specific. But it's right now I'm trying to make sure I don't overcommit.
Definitely. I think that's something that we all have to definitely work on, and it's something that I know I'm trying to do myself. So there's bunch of questions in the chat box. I'm going to start out with Trisha's. Do you do any standardized responses to students? When Trisha's embedded, she gets more questions and always trying to find a better way to make responses to student questions.
Yes, definitely. I just keep a Word document, and there's probably a better way to do this, but if there's a question that keeps getting asked and it's the same one over and over, for sure, I definitely use standardized responses. Sometimes though, I actually forget to just go to my Word document and look and see if it's there. So it really depends on the student and how they're coming across and how much help they need.
Great. And so Natalie asked, when you're building content in Blackboard and you want to add an iframe, what kind of content do you usually add? And she said an item, a file, a link.
It's usually, um, let's see, I'm pulling up my other screen here to remind myself. Usually what I'm doing is discussion board posts, and it'll be an HTML document, but within that HTML document will be a link to, video tutorials that I've created, like, for example, how to search the library catalog, or top 5 things to know when you're an online learner. So I do link out to my YouTube channel, where I tend to store most of those video tutorials. And I also like to use infographics. I'm a visual person, so I tend to try to go visual whenever possible and use as little text as possible.
Have you had any issues with accessibility in using the iframe?
I haven't. I'm pretty careful, when I'm putting iframes together, to try to follow sort of the standards that I'm aware of, like, making sure that I put in parentheses, this link will open in a new window, and other sort of basic concepts about accessibility. But I haven't had any students come to me and say that they've had issues, looking at any of the content that I put in there. Um, not yet at least.
Great. So you've discussed triaging, what web video project you'll take on, but what are some strategies you use to keep your online video content that you choose to produce current without devoting so much of your work hours to video editing? Because I think that we all know that could be a pretty tedious process.
Yeah, definitely. Well, at the moment, I haven't done too much editing because I sort of had to create a lot of tutorials from scratch. And I've been in this position for almost 3 years, but I'm anticipating that this is going to come up soon because we're having a website update, and things change with the databases. Um, what I do is I save everything. At the most of the time I use Camtasia for my videos, and so I save everything that I use within that platform in a folder and try to stay organized. And that can be hard sometimes because there's so much coming at you, and it's so easy to just like save it randomly. But I try to really stay on track so that if I need to go back to it later, I can, and I can just pull it up and I'll have everything I need from that particular video available.
That's a good strategy. I use Camtasia too, and I haven't done that before, and it can be really frustrating if you need to go back and edit. So
Yeah.
Carrie asked a bit of a technical question. You use the same iframe in many courses, and then when you update the content by editing the composer file and re-uploading it to the server using the same file name? Is that kind of how you update your content?
Let's see. I'm looking at the question right now to make sure I answer it correctly. Let's see. Yes, that's exactly correct. So once you create um, that HTML document in Composer, then you would go back to Composer when you want to change or update that content item, and then you would make sure you use the same file name. So that's exactly correct.
Great. And Sean asks, how do you get students or faculty engaged in attending or viewing your workshops? I think that's something we've talked about a lot in our committee and in the distance learning section about that engagement when you're doing online instruction.
Yeah, it's I think for everybody, I think we have um, issues sometimes getting that engagement. I I really try to do webinars for the professors that will somehow incorporate that into the course. Like if they're having a research project, and then I focus the entire webinar on, the resources that that particular class or course will need to find what they need for that research project. But a lot of times, faculty, especially at a community college, they're just so busy, and they just have such high workloads that they don't have time to deal with that. So I really, well, one of the things I started doing in the discussion board posts was putting an infographic that explains to the student what I'm there for. And so trying to be very simple and very visual and just letting them know this is what I'm here for. You have somebody in your course, and for some reason I think that draws people in because I'm sort of a safe person. I'm not the professor, I'm not grading them, and so that helps with that. But it is challenging. I think it's just always going to be challenging. So I'm always looking for ideas too.
Yeah, I think we all are, and that's why we're all here, though, to share ideas, and I think that definitely you've given us a bunch of good ones. Carrie, following up on how you kind of work your iframes in the courses. Do the iframes live in the course shell, or so that you don't have to ask for them to be added each term?
They don't. Let's see. They they actually live in a practice course that I have in Blackboard, and I'm assuming it might be similar in other LMSs, but yes, once they are, um, how I would like them to be, then they get put into the course shell. And I think different places call it different things, but like we'll have a master template for Blackboard. And that's where, when a redesign is happening, and the instructional designer and the faculty member will be working together to, update and redesign that course. And that's where I can go in and add that iframe, but that's not the original place where the iframe is coming from, because I don't want to have to go into each course shell to change my iframes. So that's why I keep them in my own practice course.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I bet that makes it a lot easier. Well, if you
Yeah.
have any more questions, feel free to use the chat box, but I'm going to start wrapping up, but we can stop if we need to ask another question. So I'd like to thank you all for attending and participating in the distance learning section discussion group event today. I hope everyone here is sort of able to take something away that will help you in your distance work. I know that we're all trying to learn and tackle a lot of new things, so I hope that there was something that was really useful to your particular position. position. This session has been recorded and it will be made available to registrants for later viewing. So you or someone you know could be the next recipient of the Routledge Distance Learning Librarianship Award. And it's a prestigious award which honors an ACRL member who has made valuable contributions to the field of distance librarianship. If you would like more information, or if you would like to nominate a colleague or yourself, please check out the link that I am pasting in the chat box right now. I also would really like to thank all the members of the DLS discussion group for their work in planning this session, and I really want to thank Heather Blicher for her wonderful presentation and her contribution to the field. As I was on the awards committee last year, and we just were so impressed by your work, and I think it's really useful and really amazing what you've done as a sole librarian there. So thank you to you for everything you do. And thank you again, everyone, for coming, and I hope that you have a great day.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thank you, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is up there on the screen. I'm always happy to talk with other distance librarians because I know there could be something obvious right out there in front of us, and we may not realize it. So feel free to reach out.